want to call this one Be an Instant Success. Look at somebody say, I'm going to learn something this morning. And I teach you things. I know a lot of things, and as a pastor, you can't always teach the things I teach in leadership, but I think you're ready for this one. It's called Be an Instant Success. There is 5 basic needs in humanity. Just 5 basic needs. No matter where you go, no matter where tribes, color, skin, no matter what countries, nations you go to, it doesn't matter about the cultures or teachings. There is 5 basic needs in every human being. And once you know those 5 basic needs, you can incorporate them into your ministry somehow, some way, or into your workplace, or just your personality. Once you incorporate that in, I'm telling you something, you'll become an instant success because you're directly talking to that need that's inside a human person, inside a human being. Your life will change immediately. It doesn't matter where you work, what you work at. It'll make your work fun. If you're in a dead-lost job and you're not happy, but employ this in your work. Watch, do you see how your world will change? People think money's got to do with success. Well, everybody needs money and everybody needs more money, and that's the way it'll always be. But let me tell you something, money and success really don't go together. I have a very close friend, another pastor friend of mine, he's a part-time pastor. He works at the same time, and the company that worked for his boss invited him up to his office one day and said to him, I'd like you to come and visit me at the house if you wouldn't mind. And he said, me visit you? He said, yeah, I'd like you to come and visit me. He said, so I started visiting the man on a regular basis. He wanted to know basically why I'm smiling all the time and excellent things like this. And then he said on one of those occasions I went in, he said he confided in me, began to cry. And I almost mentioned the guy's name, but he said, Pastor, he says, I have all this. The man lived in a mansion. He said, I have all this. He says, I have more money than I could ever spend in 3 lifetimes. He says, but I have no happiness. I am alone. And the man took cancer, and he called this pastor with him, and he said, would you be at my funeral? He said, I know you're not family, but I'd like you to be family. Would you be there for me? And so this pastor said, for sure, I'll just come. He was just an employee, but he got invited up. And so he says, I went to the funeral. He said, I was the only man that was standing at the graveside. This man was a millionaire, had everything, but when it came down to the last stroke, there was only his fella, this pastor, who stood over the gravesides. Money doesn't bring success. It never did bring happiness. Oh, it'll put a smile on your face for a while you try on a new coat or a new tie, but it's not a lasting, permanent deal. It never was supposed to be. Dr. Bernardo, we'll never remember him for his skills. We don't remember what skills Dr. Bernardo had, but we remember the impact that he had on people. That lady in India called Mother Teresa of Calcutta, she had no money, but she's been remembered. And she will for the decades to come. She'll always be remembered. There's something else that we're missing out on. I can tell you what it is, and I've said this many times. You'll never be remembered for the clothes you wear and the shoes you wear, nor the car you drive, nor the house you live in. You'll only ever be remembered for the impact that you've had on lives as you go through this journey of life. We all want the cars and the house. Everybody wants a nice standard of living. But let me tell you, that's not what you'll be remembered for. You'll only ever be remembered for the impact that you have on others. So it's down to this, how we relate to each other. In fact, Jesus said it was the second commandment equal to the first. Love the Lord your God with all your heart, with all your mind, with all your soul. And he said this one is equal to that. You'll love your neighbor as yourself. So everything you do in the kingdom of God is not connected to material wealth, but it is connected to another human being. You are necessary, you are needed. And if you lock your mind and your focus and your attention on material things, you will lose. You will never be satisfied. You will never be happy. But if you lock your full attention on serving Jesus and serving humanity in some direction, you will find true fulfillment. Our success, our happiness, and our fulfillment depends on how we communicate with other people. This is known as people's skills. People skills. You've got to become a people person. It was like teaching a leadership class to me. You have got to become a people person. You've got to like people. You've got to learn how to walk with people, not manipulate people. You've got to learn how to actually love them and think the best of them. When you look at the life of the Lord Jesus, he was a people person. Everything about his ministry was about people. It wasn't about gaining prestige or whatever. It was always about people. He knew how to draw a crowd to him. They came to him during the day. They came in their multitudes to him. And at night time they would come individually. They'd seek him out like Nicodemus, simply because he said the right things. He learned how to communicate with people. He said the right things that would bring encouragement, it would bring hope, it would bring instructions to them. So they came then by the mass multitudes during the day, and they came to him at night alone because he had something to offer. He had something to say. That's right. And I one time thought to myself, I wonder, could I possibly have that type of magnitude? Could I have that magnetic characteristics in my life? And they began to study these things and understand that we can. In fact, we necessary and we need them. If we're ever going to be successful in this life, we've got to learn how to have people skills. We've got to learn them, and you can learn them, and they're pretty easy. In fact, when you know the 5 basic needs, then you're right in there for a start. But Jesus himself said, it was recorded in Matthew 4 and verse 19, he says, come after me, and he says, I will make you become fishers of men. In other words, I want to teach you people skills. I want to teach you how to operate with people, through people. So over the years, I've learned how to enjoy people. Look at somebody, say, I enjoy your company. I've learned how to enjoy people, but I've learned and took time to understand people. And everybody's different, but I've took time to understand people. And you've got to learn how to treat people equal. All people equal, no matter where they live, what they come from. Learn how to treat all people equal. Here's one thing I learned. Learn how to respect their dream. It could be from God. You don't know. Just because you can't complete it and it doesn't fit into your file book, it doesn't mean it's not of God. But what if their dream is? Why should we laugh at their dream? So I've learned never to laugh at anybody's dream, no matter how big or way out it was. That's for them to decide if it's of God, and I'm there to help them. And I've learned how to help people. Look at somebody, say, you need help. Learn how to help people. You've got to look for the good in people, and there's good in everybody, even in the bad ones. I was talking to a policewoman not so long ago. She said, training, she just out of her training, she said when we go to arrest people, I'd sit in the back of the car with the body. And she says, you know what I've learned? She says there's good in all the bad ones too. That's right, there's good in everybody. There's good if we'll look for it. I remember in the beginning of studying for leadership and teaching leaders, and I had to read many books, and one of them was a guy called Andrew Carnegie. And Andrew Carnegie, his notoriety came because in his corporate business that he had 43 millionaires working for him. And so the Times magazine came to interview him and said, Mr. Carnegie, we understand that you have 43 millionaires working for you. How on earth did you get 43 millionaires to work for you? He says, let me tell you, son. He said they weren't millionaires before they started to work with me. They became millionaires after they started to work with me. So, of course, the question was, well, how did you develop these people into becoming millionaires? And he gave this story. He said, it's really easy. He said, it's like mining for gold. He says we take time to move hundreds of tons of dirt and earth away, just looking for the one nugget. And they said when we find the nugget, he said then we nurture it and we take time with it and we polish it up so that the good of person can be seen. He said, listen, your greatest good, the greatest good we can do for others is not to share our riches with them, but to reveal theirs in them. I thought, it's fantastic. That is fantastic. So he took time with these people and looked for their best quality and didn't worry about the other stuff, just took their quality, who they are, their gift, their talent, what they were anointed to do, and begin to work on it and bring it out and talk about it and show them how to bring it out to the surface until they became exceptional in their field. So I remember all them years ago when God began to deal with me about leaders and leadership and began to ask myself, he put questions in my heart that I'd asked. And one of these ones was this: what draws me to people? When I read their books, and I want to read more of their books, when I go and talk to people and I want to spend time with them, I ask this question, well, what is it that draws me to somebody? What is it that draws me in particular to this person? What qualities have they got that I want to spend time with them? I want to be there. And now I began to wonder, could I be the same? I'm different from them. But their quality, whatever's drawing me, what if I employed that in me? Then people would come to me, and I began to say, you can do this. Look at somebody and say, you can do this. But you got to be prepared to change. Sometimes them changes are big, sometimes they're not, but you've got to be prepared to do it. And in a time when God was dealing me with along these things, and here's where it really triggered. One morning, Laura and I was having breakfast. We used to get the kids off to school. Then I'd come back after delivering them. We'd sit down on the breakfast table, and Laura and I would spend quality time over breakfast just talking about the things before we begin to do whatever the day required us to do. And I remember sitting there, and as we were sitting breakfast, I looked across the table, and I stopped eating, and I sat there, and I looked into her eyes. I just sat and stared into her eyes. I don't know how long it took, but I stood and stared at her and stared at her. And then I had this thought, I wonder what she thinks of me. Now, I always knew, I knew what I think of me. I know what I think of me, but at that moment of time, the Holy Ghost moment, I asked myself this question. When I'm looking at her, if I was inside her, what does she think of me? And I immediately decided that the number one magnet in people's life, a drawing power in people's life, is called attitude. Look at somebody say he's going to deal with your attitude. No, I'm not. I'm just in passing. Attitude. What is it you like about a person? If we were to take time and it was a workshop and I was asking you questions and you would be shouting them back at me, I'd say, what is it, when you think of a person that you like, when you think of a person you admire, when you think of a person you want to spend time with, what is it that you like about them? What qualities is it? You'd probably turn around and say, well, maybe honesty, or maybe they're very positive, or kind, or caring, or fun, or exciting, or they're just easy to get on with, or they're very motivating. Do you know every one of them traits is not a skill, it's called an attitude. Every one of them comes under the same title called attitude. Do you know if you can change your attitude just a slight, look at somebody saying you might need to change your attitude. But if there was a slight change in attitude, it would turn everything. It would change everything. People would want to talk with you. People would want to sit with you. People would leave the table to come to sit at your table because of attitude. The number one thing is attitude. And attitudes can be learned. You can learn. In fact, what I realized, and I wrote this down many years ago, they spent millions on education, but nothing's ever taught on attitude. And if somebody would just sit and teach a class on attitude, it would make all the difference in the world, because Jesus taught on it. Here's what Jesus said in Matthew chapter 7 and verse 12. He says, therefore all things, listen to this, whatsoever you would men should do unto you, he says, do you even so to them, for this is the law and the prophets. This is set in stone. This is a law like the law of gravity. He says, whatever you want people to do for you, he says, you do it unto them first. So what is it you want people to do? Walk up and give you money? He said, if that's what you want, he says, apply the law. You walk up and give somebody money first. What do you want them to do? Go, hi, hi, when they see you. Well, then you know what you need to do? The next time you see them, says, hi, hi. What is it you want men to do for you? Because whatever way you want somebody to treat you, he says, here's how it works. It's a law. Here's how it works. He says, you decide to do it to them first. It means you change your life. So you got to sit down and think some things through. But if you can decide what way you want to be treated and do it to somebody else and do it as a lifestyle, your world will change. I put this into operation 30 years ago, and I found that it works. Every syllable of it works. Every inch of it works. It begins to generate something on the inside of us. When you decide how I'd like to be treated, treat somebody else the same way, and you watch how it kicks off. I started to learn straight away. I'm a quick learner. I started to learn. So I watched and learned how to say things and learn how to do things. And I remember one thing, this one sticks in my mind, but there used to be in Lurgan, when we had a church building in Lurgan, there's a pizza place there. I'm not big into pizza. I would avoid it at all costs if I could, but sometimes because you've got grandkids, you've got to eat. pizza. But in them days, my stomach was a bit better quality than it is now, and pizza was good. And so there was a beautiful little Italian restaurant in the middle. It's not even there anymore, but it was there in the middle of Lurgan. And it used to be on Sunday nights when the service was over, Laura and I and maybe a few other people would skip down to that wee restaurant, that little Italian restaurant there, and we would sit and eat pizza, etc. Just a little bit of fun after church. And I was learning all these things and thinking, well, what would I like? And I watched the man where I was sitting. I could see the kitchen. It was open. I watched the man who was tossing, the powder and getting it all. He's working really, really hard. Every now and then he'd wipe the sweat on his brow, and he was working really hard. And I thought, if that was me in there, I'd like somebody just to turn around and say, "That's a nice pizza you have made." So when it came time to pay, I walked up to the counter, and the man, instead of the girl serving, the man himself that was tossing the pizza, he came out and he stood in front of me. I said, "I'd like to tell you, sir, that's the best pizza I've ever tasted." I said, "I'm not big into pizzas, but you must be real Italian in order to cook a pizza like that." He stood up real quick. He said, "I am Italian. I said, "Well, then Italians can make the best pizza." He stood and smiled. I said, "How much is that?" He said, "It's on the house this time, sir. It's on the house this time, sir." So I took it down in my diary. This thing really works. I didn't do it for free pizza, but here's what happened. He responded to a compliment. He responded to it. Let me tell you something. Many times after that, I would go and he would say, "You're back for the pizza." I'd say, "Just like a mama used to make." And we would laugh a little bit. And let me tell you, there was one night we had some visiting speakers in church, some Americans, and I said, "Come on, we got this great little Italian restaurant." And so we got in the car, we come, and these were long-winded preachers, and we were late. And as I pulled up to the place, the man himself was pulling down the shutter. So I jumped out real quick and I said, "Are you closed? Are you closed?" And he pulled the shutter back up and he says, "Not for you, sir. Come in." And then he dropped the shutter down behind. He says, "You wanted the pizza? You wanted the pizza?" It all kicked off because one night I said, "This is the best pizza that I've ever eaten." You had need to learn how to compliment people. Look at somebody, say, "I like your hair." Oh, Lord bless us. You've got to learn how to say nice things. Let me tell you, you can't help people respond. People always respond to nice words. You learn how to do it to everybody, anybody. Take it as a principle and start and do it and watch to see how it does. I know people in there said, "Well, I'll just give them a piece of my mind." Well, that's what's wrong with you. You've give that many pieces, you've nothing left. Look at somebody say, "That sounds good to me." Absolutely. So let me get down to these five basic traits in every human being. And if you learn how to minister to them, talk to them, you don't have to be a minister. You don't even have to be in ministry. You could be a waitress and do this. This will work for you. This will get you a pay rise. Number one, write this down. Number one is everybody worldwide, doesn't matter where they are, want to be encouraged. Everybody wants to be encouraged. In fact, the best exercise for your heart and your experience is learn how to reach out to somebody and encourage them. Learn how to have a vocabulary. Learn how to have statements. Learn how to have sentences and paragraphs inside your thinking, so that at a drop of a hat you can say something like this that will lift somebody and encourage somebody wherever you are. In fact, the best friends that you have are the ones that encourage you. And let me tell you something, you run 1,000,000 miles. You don't really have a close relationship with anybody that's continually pulling you down. You'll get away from them as fast as you can. And now that you know that, then you need, if you want to be magnet, if you want to have this magnetic attitude, personality, then you need to start and encourage people. I guarantee you, when you do that, people then will start to encourage you. In fact, what I've learned down through the years, the happiest people, which meant to be the born-again believers, really, but the happiest people are on the face of planet Earth are those people who invest their time into the life and the welfare of others. In fact, the unhappiest people are the ones that sit at home and wonder how the world's going going to make them happy because they're hurting, etc. Let me tell you something. If you're a person watching this and you're full of loneliness, you know what you need to do? Just get on your glad rags, close the door behind you, and go and find a cafe or a restaurant, or take yourself a walk in the park and somewhere. And when you meet the human being, learn how to say something to them. Learn how to forget about your needs and yourself, and go and find somebody and begin to say something that will encourage them, increase them. It'll lift you like you've never seen before, but it will bring this back to you really quickly. Jesus was a master at this. He spoke to Zacchaeus one time. Remember, Zacchaeus is the short guy up the tree. He's hiding. The reason he's hiding is because he comes underground, they'll beat the living daylights out of him. He's a tax collector, and he's a fraud, and he's a cowboy, and he's stealing his own people's money. He's working for the Romans. He's working against his own people, and they know it. If they get him, man, like he's in trouble. So he's hiding up a tree, but he's not hiding from Jesus. And Jesus stops right under the tree and said, "Hey, Zacchaeus." He knew his name. Nobody told him his name, but he knew his name. And he said, "Hey, come on down, Zacchaeus." He said, "Today I'm going to your house." And let me tell you, Luke 19 and verse 6 says this, and Zacchaeus, he said, he received him joyfully. That's the guy hasn't smiled in 20 years. He's got nothing to smile about. He's lonely, he's desperate, he's afraid, and he's a con artist. And nobody ever bothers him, nobody ever wants to come to his house. But one man did, called Jesus Christ. He knew what to say. I want to tell you something. He called him by his name. It's one of those things you need to learn. That Jesus, you'll see him again with the widow's mite. It's just one woman. One woman. And in the eyes of the world, what she just put in the offering is nothing. It's less than nothing. But Jesus saw it, and he made reference to her. I told you, he's telling the disciples and making a parable out of it, and he's making reference to her. I guarantee she heard it. And don't you think her two mites, her two sunbeams, her two slotty, her €2 that she threw in there, her £2 she put it. Do you not think that all of a sudden, if that's all she had, it suddenly threw her shoulders back and put a smile on her face? You have the ability to put a smile back on people's face. If you can put a smile on people's face, people will put a smile on your face. Peter, one time, Jesus said to Peter one time, he said, "By the way, Peter, I need to talk to you. Satan has desired to sift you as wheat." I don't know what all that entails, but it doesn't sound good to me. I've not had one of those prophecies in many, many years. But Satan has decided to sift you as wheat. He's going to put you through the ringer. But then Jesus, if he had stopped there, it was still truth. That's what Satan wanted to do. But he didn't stop there. Jesus never stopped there. He never just gave the bad news. He always something tagged on the end of it just to help somebody through the thing, just to encourage them. And he says, But Peter, you not to know this, son. I have been praying for you. I'm praying for you that your faith fails not. I've learned over the years, when you tell people, I'm going to pray for you. When you tell people, I have been praying for you. And of course, I don't tell them you're going to do it unless you're going to do it. But if you're real honest and you do pray, and you say, I've been praying for you. Let me tell you, that deeply encourages people. You'll find then people will say, hey, I was praying for you. Whatever you want men to do unto you, do it unto somebody first. I have two tremendous friends in America, a young man and his wife, and he sent me an email a few weeks ago. He listens to these services, and after one of them, as a response, he sent me an email. He says, I need you to see this, Joe. And he wrote, Lisa and I, this is Billy Ward, all right? Billy, I'm talking about you now. Lisa and I had a divine appointment last week at a restaurant. When our waitress came to our table, she was really mad about something and was really short with us. I think I must have ate at that restaurant more than once. You know, did you ever get a grumpy waitress? Did you ever get one of them? You know, she just sets the thing down and says, enjoy. And you want to say, enjoy what? Well, anyway, but evidently Billy's found one of these places, and he says our waitress came to our table and she was really mad about something and was real short with us, and when she asked us what did we want to drink, and I asked her how her day was going, thinking that she'd probably lie and say great. But no, she said, I'm having a horrible day. So I told her, well, we're here to change that. And I guarantee when he say that Billy has a a factious smile. He has when he smiles, you just can't help but smiling. And I guarantee here, when she was coming over real grumpy, and he said to her, "Well, we're here to change that." I guarantee he said that with a smile on her face. And here's what she said on her countenance or her face. It immediately changed. And she put her hand on my arm and said that her day has changed for the better because of Billy and Lisa. And it says that's all it took to put a smile on her face. I even noticed that how she changed when she was talking to other tables that she was serving. I believe we were sent to her table just to wait on her so that we could change her day, and haven't done it before it even got worse. You see, that's not a big ministry thing, but it was for somebody. It changed somebody's life because all he said was something with a smile behind it. If you learn to open your mouth and say something encouraging to everybody, practice it. When you go to get your petrol, when you go to get out of Tesco's, and them girls are bored to tears working it out, learn how to say something nice. Learn how to look for the look of their jewelry they're wearing. Look at their rings. That's a beautiful ring. Just stop the whole world for a minute and make a compliment. And don't get sarcastic about it. Just make a compliment and watch to see their world change. Absolutely. I was thinking when I was putting this together about you, Frank, and how you took that young man, Jack, and how you just said, Jack, just a young man getting on with his life, but you took time and you made a few compliments and a few things just said to him that evidently changed his world. You can say things. It doesn't have to be earth-shattering. It's just learn how to say something simple to somebody that will cause their world to change. Number 2 is everybody wants to be appreciated. So number 1, everybody wants encouraged. Number 2 is everybody wants to be appreciated. Treat others as you would want them to treat you, and then watch the change take place. Treat that person that you meet, that you're talking to, like they're the most important person that you're going to meet that day. No matter who they are, no matter where they live, no matter what status in life, treat them like they're the most important person that you're meeting today. If you treat them like that, you'll talk to them like that. Treat them like the work that they're doing is the most important work that needs to be done. To the world, it's just a mandatory job. To the world, it's insignificant, but to them, it's their world. So take time and notice and learn how to compliment and learn how to say something simple like, "Hey, where did you learn to do it?" I remember going to the bank years ago. They don't do this now. They've got money machines, and they put the notes in, it goes brrrr, and the number comes up 760,000. You know, and I haven't counted like that in a long time. But in the old days, it was a woman who licked her thumb and got the ring. Anybody remember that? And they counted it like this. And there was one cashier I used to go to in the bank. I'd have paid money to watch her. But she got this here, and she never asked you how much. She just... And she was like lightning going in. She just looked at you and told you how much it was. Right every time. Usually it was me who was wrong. Anyway, and one day I was thinking, I've got to say something here. I've got to say something. Just thinking ahead. I've got a compliment. So I turned around and said, I've never seen anybody can count money like that. I said, "Where did you learn that?" Well, she a smile come on her face. She says, "Nobody's ever noticed." I said, "Well, I have noticed." I said, "I've been in every time." I said, "I watch it." I said, "You're accurate, and I said, "I've never seen it." I said, "Did you practice that at home?" Well, she got all flustered and moved her glasses about and had another drink of water. But let me tell you something, all of a sudden it penetrated the darkness. All of a sudden, let me tell you, the next time I came back into the bank and there was a crowd lined up, she waved up. And I didn't have to be at the back of the crowd. I came up and I said, "I'm here to watch you today again." I was into the bank not so long ago here because of something to do with Laura's account. And I said, and the very woman at the bank at the top saw us sitting down there. We had been sitting for 15 minutes and nobody noticed us. But she noticed, and she left what she was doing, came round to the back, and she says, "Hello, Joe." She says, "What can I do for you?" Let me tell you, know it all came about a small compliment. You need to learn how to make compliments. There's 5 basic needs in every human being. I don't care who they are, where they come from. It works everywhere, anytime. People want encouraged. People want to be appreciated. Most people do think wonderful things about people. I know you're probably sitting there now thinking wonderful things about me. I understand that. But most people never actually say it. They do think it, but you never actually say it. Let me tell you, while it's still a thought, it is of no value. But it becomes tremendous value when it comes on your tongue and you speak it out to somebody and you tell them how much you appreciate them. You tell them how you change the world. You tell them how significant they are in your life, and watch to see how life changed for you. Jesus one time is recorded in Mark 14 and verse 6. We'll not turn to it, gentlemen, but in Mark 14 and 16 it tells a story about what we know as the alabaster box. And let me tell you something, that woman, according to the scriptures, had everything in her savings converted over into perfume. And let me tell you, she took and she broke the casket open over. She can't put it back in now. Once you break the liquid, it's going to flow all over the place. Your life savings just run down the beard of Jesus. She broke it over the top of him. And let me tell you something, her very service, the disciples turned round and scorned her and rebuked her. Said that money could have been sold on eBay and given to the poor. But Jesus was a master at this. He's speaking right to her now. And he said, the abbreviated version just says, let her alone, fellas. She's done a good work. You know, if you learn how to tell the people, hey, you've done a great job. Even if they're fixing the wheel of your car, or they're running a spanner around your lawnmower, or they put paint up there. You know what you learn? If you just walk in at any time, at any place, and say, that's a fantastic job you did. You're doing a great job there. Say it to the waitress. Say it to the counselor. Say it to somebody. You're doing a great job. Or you get a mother with 2 children trying to wheel the buggy, you know, with her stomach going and holding on 2 children and got the baby's bottle and bags over her back. You know, if you walked up and just say, hey, you're doing a great job with them children. Learn how to tell people they're doing a great job. Practice. Look at somebody and say, you're doing a great job. Luke chapter 7 verse 9 is about a centurion, and man come up. Listen, this guy risked everything. He's a Roman soldier. He's not supposed to be walking about with Jesus. He's risking everything now. He risks his job to talk to Jesus. And Jesus just stood there for a minute after things. He had a conversation, and he said to the disciples, in front of everybody was there, he says, I've not seen so great faith, no, not in all of Israel. Do you not think that soldier would have put his shoulders back at that point and moved back? That's right. When you learn to make compliments, when you learn to tell people, your workers, your staff, when you learn to tell people they're doing a fantastic job, let me tell you something. It'll change the world. You won't have to threaten them to do it. They'll do it even better. I told you this story before, but it goes down well with this. But my son, one time, he came to me, him and his mates were going somewhere that I didn't want them to go, but they're overage and they'll do what they're going to do anyway. And so it was a bad, wet, rainy night, and he said to me, he says, we're looking to go there. I said, I wouldn't go there if I was you. He said, it's raining, and he says, Dad, he said, we can't get anybody else to take us over. All the taxis are dead. We can't get any. And he looked at me, and I thought, you're not going to ask me. And he looked at me, and he says, would you take us? He's just me, a couple of fellas. Would you take us? I said, to there? To that? Are you kidding me? He said, no, Dad. He said, we're desperate. He says, we've got to get there. And he said, there's nobody else. There's nobody else. Where I remember saying, oh, all right. And I put on my coat and I grabbed. You know how it is? You got to make this visual display of not really wanting. So you grab the keys and you slam the door. Are you ready yet? Anybody know what I'm talking about? You're not like that, but you're trying to put this image over. This is disgusting that you'd even ask. You know what I'm trying to say here? And so we're in the car, and I'm not there giggling and laughing, and I'm not talking. I'm hanging on to the steering wheel. You know how it is. Till we get out, and we got parked outside the place, and the other fellas jumped out the back, and my young fella, he's sitting up the front of me, and he stopped before he got out. And he turned around and he put his hand on my shoulder. And he patted me on the shoulder, and he says, Dad, he said, there's nobody like you. He said, I want you to know, I said, me and the lads appreciate what you did for us. There's nobody else would have done what you just did. And I tell you something, he got me. He got me. I remember turning around at that point and said, well, look, what time are you out, fellas? And sure, if you give me a ring and it's not too late, I'll come back over and pick you up. And he said, I knew I could depend on you. I said, oh, you can depend on me, son. And away he went. And I went down the road whistling and rejoicing. And then I got home and I thought, he got me. He did a number on me there. That's right. That's right. Because he spoke words of appreciation. If you learn, are you learning here this morning? You can say this to your children. You can say this to your great aunt. You can say this to Annie. You can learn how to, when you get onto them phone calls and you push button A and pushing B to get to C, and when C doesn't answer, you go back to no. And eventually, do you know what I'm saying? And you get there and somebody comes on the phone, you can hardly understand what they're saying. Let me tell you, when they've finished and they're saying, is there anything else? Just say it. Learn how to say it. There's nobody treated me the way you just did. I want to tell you, is there somewhere that I can put it from 0 to 10? I'll put 10 on you. Just tell them it. I want to tell you something. They'll hang on to that conversation. They'll want to know more. They'll want to know, can I give you free stuff and all the rest of it? It works. Look at somebody say it works, because we're going to number 3. Are we doing all right? I hope it doesn't take too long. Well, it will, but I'm learning. Number 3, it says, people want others to forgive them. They've got to actually hear that I forgive you. Let me tell you something. The world's wrongs and the heartaches and the headaches and a lot of the emotional upheaval, stresses and diseases comes because of unresolved conflict on the inside or between human beings. The failure to develop right relationships with people is one of the greatest causes. And because of that, many people then in this nation, across the globe, and other nations, it's a basic humanic need, and it is this: they have a deep desire to feel total forgiveness. Ernest Hemingway wrote a story one time, which is phenomenal. But he said there was this dad in Spain who had a son called Pascal. He had a son called Pascal. And the dad and the son never really got on, but the son was a bit of a rebel. And at one time, there was a major outburst between the two of them. There was a fallout between them. And so the young boy went upstairs, he packed his bag, and he out the door and slammed the door after him. And after several weeks, the dad became really concerned about him, began to say he's sorry for it, never should have said it, shouldn't have happened, got to find him. But he had no way of finding the boy. And for about a year, he tried to track down where Pascal, his son, was. And eventually he went down to the local corner shop and he put an advert in the corner shop window that said, Dear Pascal. It's a common name in Spain, by the way, but Dear Pascal, meet me in front of the newspaper office tomorrow at noon. All is forgiven. I love you, Dad. The next day he came back to the town square and there was 800 Pascals. 800 Pascals were standing in the square. I have realized across the world, across the nations, there's this desperate need for people to have forgiveness. Forgiveness from God, first of all, but a forgiveness for human beings, from mankind. Sometimes it's to forgive themselves. It's a basic need. And if you can learn to minister into that, let me tell you something, you'll become instantly successful with that person. The 2 great qualities in believers' life is, one, that they're givers, and secondly, that they are forgivers. You got to learn to forgive quickly. In fact, those who hold grudges are only hurting themselves and holding themselves back and limiting themselves like you've never known before. Here's what I've learned over the years: you can't control what happens to you. I can't help what people think and what people say and how people react. So I can't control what happens to me. But I can help what happens in me. And you can refuse to be offended. You can refuse it. When you read the story of King David, and I do on a regular basis, I go back in 1st and 2nd Samuel, love those 2 books. But you'll find there's a man there called David who was haunted. They sent thousands of troops out. He was driven from a man that was supposed to be on the throne, driven out to exile. He lived under daily threat from just one individual. Daily threat from King Saul. He had friendships that were dissolved and removed from him, even the one from his wife. All those friendships were taken from him. His closest friends in ministry, the priesthood in them days, were slaughtered. 70 of them were slaughtered simply because they were friends with David. If anybody had the right to seek revenge and to hold unforgiveness against Saul, it was this guy. But he never did. And on 2 occasions it's written in the Bible that when Saul was in striking distance and Saul could have finished him and got revenge and got his own back, but he wouldn't betray himself, so he never did it. In fact, what I learned long ago, you can lose more than your throne. You can lose your destiny by running around with grudges and seeking revenge and unforgiveness. And when you read about David, at this man Saul who did die, at his funeral, David got up and had said some things over it. And here's what it was recorded in 2 Samuel chapter 1 and verse 17. He said, and David lamented with a lamentation over Saul and over Jonathan his son. He said, the beauty of Israel is slain upon the high places. How are the mighty fallen? Verse 23 says, Saul and Jonathan were lovely and pleasant in their lives, and in their death they were not divided. They were swifter than eagles, and they're stronger than lions. Does that sound like a man that's seeking revenge? He could have turned around and said, pig face and the piglet are dead. Ha ha ha. But he didn't. Because he never sought revenge. He waited on God to get revenge. And he offered forgiveness. If you learn how to offer forgiveness, walk in people, and help people through their forgiveness, man, you'll become an instant success. Here's number 4. This is going to be real quick now because I can see you're getting bored. So let's go for this. People want others to listen to them. The work of a counselor is not that you learn how to talk, although if you're going to school to learn to teach you Freud and all the rest of it. But the work of a counselor, the majority of the work of a counselor is not in what you say. The majority of the work in counseling is listening. The person does all the talking, you do the listening. And there is a difference between listening and hearing. Sometimes people, I'll look like I'm listening, and Laurel said to me, you're not hearing what I say. I looked like I was hearing, but there's a difference between listening and hearing. Hearing means you actually want to listen to what that person has to say. So if you want a person to know that you're listening, you've got to give them your full attention. You can't be looking all around the place and studying your watch. No, you've got to look them right in the eye. You've got to talk to them. It's good if you can remember something about eye contact. You've got to learn how to look into somebody's eye. Just grab their eye and hold their attention. Stay focused. No matter what's happening, going on around the room, stay focused with that person. You're letting them know I'm listening to what you have to say. Another thing is remember something about that person. So when the conversation comes up, you can say it. And then they'll say, hey, he was listening. Another thing about it is remember their name. Now, it's really easy for you. If you have a small family, you know their names. But when you're going around, you would know this. When you were going around people for the first time, you're meeting them. This is Albert, this is Sheila. And you're going through, how do you remember them all? But there's something you have to get at. You've got to start and remember the people's names. And so when you come back and you meet them 3 weeks later, you come back and say, hey, Jimmy, how's it going with you? And you can shake their hands. And it's good if you can remember something about them. It simply meant when you were talking, I was listening. And people has this desperate desire to be listened to. If you want to become a listener, you become an instant success. You know when I found something years and years ago? Everybody has a pet subject. And if you say, well, I'm not real good at talking, then learn this. If you open a conversation, you get a conversation going. You're not 4 minutes into a conversation to the person you're talking to ends up talking about their pet subject. It comes out every single time. And the minute they talk about the pet subject, all you've got to turn around and say to them is, well, how do you learn that? Or do you study that? Or just ask something about the pet subject. After that, you don't have to say a word because they'll talk the rest of the night. And you see, after you finish them and you go back home, they'll say that's the best conversation. That's the best time we've ever had in our life. And you never said a word. It's because you took interest in their pet subject. That's a whole other stuff. But here's the last one. Look at somebody say, thank goodness. I'm trying to help you this morning. This is how life works. This is how ministry works. This is how, if you want to be a people person, if you want to be a car salesman, if you want to sell telephones, then this is how you do it. Learn the traits. Here it is. Number 5 is this. People want to feel that they're understood. I don't know if you've ever been misunderstood. I've been misrepresented. People said Joe Corry said this when Joe Corry wasn't even there. I've had people say, but you said this. I never said the like of it at all. But anyway, you ever been misunderstood? You ever feel that you're misunderstood? Because there's feelings that comes with that. There's all types of frustration rises, and there's all types of disappointment, even resentment will rise behind it. I remember years ago, we're out of here in 5 minutes, so stick with me. But I remember watching the news one time when it was a man from South Africa. Now, the plane was arriving, the television cameras was there. They were waiting on a man who had been held in prison for 10 years in South Africa, who they suddenly found out he was an innocent man, and he was released. And the cameras are there, and he was walking down the steps on the runway. He was walking down steps of an airplane, and the reporters was there, and they came to him, and you could see this man. He was thin, he was broken. And they came and they asked him, and one of the reporters got real close with the camera and said, "Sir, what is it that you remember the most about your 10 years? He says, "There's only one thing." And he said it with tears in his eyes. He says, "Nobody understood me." He said, "I tried to plead, I tried to tell them." He says, "They just didn't understand." The feeling of not being understood is horrendous. Jesus talks in their scriptures about a woman that was taken in adultery. It takes two to commit adultery. Evidently, they'd let the man go. They just pulled the woman and they said, because it says they'd caught her in adultery, caught in the very act. So there was two of them, but there's only one woman in trial. And they got around her, and she's trying to make a case. It was Jesus walked up there. He's the one that dealt with it, but he said, "I understand." Do you know he still understands everything about you? He knows your concerns. He knows your woes. He knows it all. He didn't contradict her. He didn't put her down. In fact, he released her from that moment by simply saying, "I understand." 50% of all divorce comes by a breakdown of communications because nobody understands anybody anymore. If you learn to understand people, there's only one way you can learn to understand people, and that's by taking time to be with them. And when you understand people, when you understand them, then you'll treat them different. I remember years and years ago in that bank that I used to go to, but there was this other cashier, as a lady. She was a nasty piece of goods. In fact, I nicknamed her the Dragon. And I used to come up with the offering, we put it into the bank, and there would be several cashiers there. And I'd be in that line, and there she would be sitting. There's the Dragon sitting. And I used to pray, "Dear God," I said, "let this one move and that move, and I don't need my morning rack too. I don't want to stand in front of the Dragon." You know what happened every Monday? That's right. I was right there in front of the Dragon, and there she was, and she wouldn't smile. She just thumped the stamp down and looked at you like you're wasting her time and wasting her day. I said, "What is wrong with this woman?" But nevertheless, after several months of being harassed by this woman, I was coming across in through Lurgan one day, and the traffic was stopped at the zebra crossings. I had to pull up real quick because somebody comes running out from the bank, running across the zebra crossings. So I put on brakes and stopped, and it was the woman. It was the Dragon. And as I looked at her, I looked further down, and she was heavily pregnant. I thought, that's what's been wrong with you. Morning sickness, just as I happened to come along. Nobody's pleasant in a time of morning sickness. But I understood. Once you understand, and the only way you can understand people is by spending time with people, getting to know people. And so if you want to do it, do it in church. I invite you to mix with people. Mix with different people every Sunday. Shake a hand, say hello, ask them where they're from. Do something different. I invite somebody somewhere. Whatever you need to do, but just make a difference. How many times? Only 5 basic traits. Look at that. I give you 10. But there's really only 5. Unless you're saying double. But there's 5. 5 basic traits. And you can learn how to speak into them and to minister into them. It'll change your world forever. I'm going to read this now in closing. Is that okay? This is it. We're closing now. But you're going to have to change the way you talk. You're going to have to work on it. You're going to have to change your smile, whether you want or not. You're going to have to smile. You have to change your attitude. Do it before the Lord and say, show me what to do. How am I going to do this? And change your vocabulary. And this is how you change it. You listen to yourself talking for the rest of the day. Record yourself as an essay. And listen to how many times you use the word I or me. Just talking about yourself all the time. This is a very selfish world. They're all around taking selfies. They only talk about themselves, what I'm doing and I'm doing. Let me tell you, listen to how many times you talk about I. I want this. I'm doing this. I'm over here. I. And you need to use that less now than you've ever used it before, and start to incorporate the word called we. So it says, I'm doing this. Why don't you incorporate? It means I'm bringing you with me and say, we could do this together. So cut out I and bring in we. And you mean bring it, well, you've got friends all of a sudden you never had. Just one simple change. Instead of I, put we. We could do this. We could go there. We could enjoy this. This is something we could do. Put we in. The two most important words is this called thank you. Now in this generation we live is called thanks. Thanks doesn't cut it. Thanks doesn't work. Thanks has no emotion behind it. The word thank you is simply two words. Everybody shout thank you. Thank you are tremendous words. Learn to say it. Learn to say it. When the man takes your Chinese takeaway to the door, look at him, don't say thanks. Turn around and say thank you. It has a different meaning behind it. It has emotion behind it. It has something behind it that really means I just appreciate what you've just done for me. Learn to say thank you. It's called appreciation. Here's another one. Three most important words is this. All is forgiven. All is forgiven. The four most important words is this is, what is your opinion? When you ask somebody, what's your opinion? It simply means then, I'm listening to what you have to say. The five most important words, and use this on a regular basis, you did a good job. I say it all the time. Say it to people. Tell the postman, you do a great job. Tell people. I guarantee when you tell them, when the next day that girl puts your groceries into the bag and charges you the 25 pence for a plastic bag, just say you did a great job. You packed that like an expert. And watch to see the smile come on their face. Are you going to do this? Of course you are. And tell you, the five most important words is, you did a great job. You know the five most important words that you'll ever hear is after you're dead and you go to heaven, and you'll hear it, well done, my good and faithful servant. Sixth most important words, and then we close, is this, I want to know you better. I want to know. Now that'll get you engaged. I want to know you better simply means I'm interested in you and I'm interested in your word. I'm interested in your life. I want to know you better. Who are you? Spending time with people. Five simple things. Five really simple things. If you'll take time, this will be up on air tonight somewhere. Yes, the man who puts it up is smiling at me. It will be up tonight probably about 6:30. Let me tell you something. If you want the transcript of this, if you want my sermon notes, text me or email me, and I'll email you the notes and learn these. I've taught this in leadership classes. When I do pastors, leaders classes, I teach this. This is. It's called instant success. I guarantee if you employ any one of them, people now will want to meet you the second time. If you continue one, people will want to meet you the third time. They'll want to be your best friends. If you employ that. I learned this 30 years ago. It became not something that I needed. It became my life. I said, well, this is the way I need to be. So I pursued that with everything inside me. Why don't you stand to your feet this morning? God loves you. He has great intentions for you. He wants you to reach the world, but if you're going to be nasty and sarcastic and grumpy and never smile, who's going to listen to you? If you hang on to every penny you have and you never tip a waitress, who's going to want to serve your table? If all you can do is, this is too cold, take it away and heat it up. Who wants to serve you? They'll run from you. Whenever you do that, the waiters will stand behind and say, I wouldn't go to his table. But I'll tell you something, if you learn to leave a tip, big or small, if you compliment them when you come down and say, that's nice, wonderful, you served that well, let me tell you something, they'll fight to get to serve you. You can change your world, and it can start right now. Before you go home this day, you'll have called in somewhere, seen somebody, whatever. Employ it. Learn to smile. Learn to smile and say something somewhere, somehow, no matter how you're feeling. How do you want people to treat you? Then just begin to do it to somebody else and watch how fast this begins to come back. This is how to become an instant success. This is how to if you work on it the rest of your life, everything about your life will become successful. Success, again, in closing, is not about money. It's not about prestige. It's not about position. Success is about people. And it's simple people skills. And when you do it not to manipulate or to be motivated to get somebody to help you, if you do it because I want to serve Jesus Christ, and this is what he would do, and I want to win people and reach people, then do these things and watch God use you in the most tremendous and fantastic way. Hold somebody's hand this morning. Father, we are believing there's an anointing in this house, that I believe with all my heart you're going to send people into the highways and byways of life. There's people out there that have never been reached. The sick, the lonely, the desperate, the suicidal, the frustrated. They're all out there. And they don't know who to trust anymore. They don't know who to talk to. They're afraid. They're terrified. They've got stuff going on the inside. But here in front of us, here are the people that's listening, and they're the salt of the earth. They're the light of the world. They've got something in them that nobody else has. And I'm going to believe as we dismiss the crowd, as they go out through the door, they're going into a mission field. They're going out into a world that's desperate and it needs them. So I pray as we release the people, there'll be an anointing upon them this morning so that they'll reach the captive, say something to people, and turn their world around. I believe no matter how old you are or young you are, young and old can all employ it and all do it, and it'll make our world a better place to live. I pray as born again believers that we'll smile, we'll have a great attitude towards life and towards others. I pray there's an anointing upon these people this morning that will bring healing, because the Bible says we can lay hands on the sick and the sick shall recover. I pray that we'll be unlimited in our thinking, so that there'll be no crisis anybody goes through that will ever call impossible, but we'll turn around and say it may be impossible with man, but it's surely possible with God. There's people out there with broken marriages and broken lives, and they're lonely and they're frustrated, and they don't want to go to court one more time. They don't know what to do, but oh God, send these people. Send them to them with a smile. Send them to them in the midst of their crisis with a word of knowledge or a revelation or something that will help that person on their way. People out there full of cancers and sores and chest problems and infections, and the National Health Service is overburdened at the minute, and we can't get the medication we really need, and you can't even get to see a doctor in time. So we're going to believe there's an anointing must increase upon these people's lives so that they can be right there at that moment when somebody needs help. I send these people this morning on the authority of the name of Jesus into the highway and byway of life, that they can meet the needs of humanity in Jesus' name.